Hello again. Welcome to Crafts from the Round Table. In this episode, we will be making some blocking terrain. What is blocking terrain, you say?
Oh, great. Blocking terrain. Now what do we do? You're the one with the axe, so get chopping.
When I first started making blocking terrain, I didn't really have a size in mind. So I was making bigger pieces like this, which are about 7.5 by 7.5 hex squares. And it's a pretty big piece. I settled on smaller hex around there of 4.5 by 4.5. That seemed to be a lot better for what I needed. So you can see the big difference there between the 7.5 and the 4.5. Pretty big there. And I did the swamp tile too on the 7.5 by 7.5, but we'll be making it on the smaller scale. And also, I will go over in another episode some of the homemade flocking that I use to do a forest blend that I think looks pretty good. And we'll go over that. The forest blend is in these tiles here. I think it looks pretty realistic for, at least for what I like. So, this episode we're going to make little forest blocking terrain. The first thing I start with is 1/2 inch pink XPS foam. Now, I used a game piece from the one game that I have, Battle Masters, as a template. These are about 4 3/4 wide. I know I said 4.5 before, but it's more like 4 3/4. But when it's cut down, it usually winds up somewhere between 4.5 and 4 3/4 wide. I seem to really like this dimension. You can do whatever dimension you want. So I use my cardboard piece as a template, and I cut the XPS foam. You could cut it with a knife, with a hot wire cutter, however you feel comfortable. These I had cut with a handheld hot wire cutter. Pretty simple. Then I start by chopping the ends up. You can use whatever knife you like. I like a regular non-serrated kitchen knife. They seem to give nice defined cuts. And I just start cutting away. Then what I like to do is I like to take a foam sanding little block. Get these at Home Depot in the sheetrock aisle. And they work pretty good for roughing things up a little bit even more. That really roughs up the edges pretty good. It's nice for when you start dry brushing the rock face. Next we take our good old Mod Podge and black paint mix and seal up our foam. I use the black mix when I'm doing anything with rock faces. If it's ground cover, I'll do a brown and Mod Podge mix. Not too critical on how I do this. like to get in all the nooks and crannies. Okay, looks good. Let's let it dry. Now we put our first coat of gray on. This one is Pewter Gray. This is Walmart's brand. Pewter Gray. This is our first coat of gray. And we just slap it on. I'm not too worried about the top because we're going to put brown over the top. Okay, now we let the gray dry. Now brush on some gray. Dry brush. We're going to dry brush some gray. Ah, looks nice. Don't worry if it goes on a little light because we're going to do our black wash. And it will darken it up quite a bit. Now put on a very, very, very light dry brush of vanilla. One more step before the black wash, we'll paint the top with burnt umber. What I do is I put it on heavy towards the center and then I try to dry brush it into the gray on the outside. There are many YouTube videos on how to make a black wash for terrain, so you could look them up, or if anybody is really interested on how to do it, we could make a future episode with black wash, but there are plenty of videos out there already. So just take your black wash and black wash your piece. I do mostly the ends and not the brown because we want the black wash really to affect the grays. And it's all washed. Let it dry. Next, we will make our forest floor mix. So, what we'll do is we'll take a bunch of our organic matter and we will go over this in another episode. I've got some of my custom colored sawdust, some nice tea leaves, coffee, leaves, my custom rocks, because you always have rocks, and I always throw in some blended turf earth blend, and I throw in some blended turf green blend. And sometimes I'll even add in some coconut fibers. Makes it look like there is broken branches on the ground. Now for the coconut fibers, I will take a scissor and cut them into small pieces. 50-50 glue mix, all ready to go from other projects. So I just take it, pour it in there, and mix it up. We'll take this and scoop it on top. I'll also take some green lichen, I think that's how you say it, and rip it up and just let it fall into place. Take a little bit more dirt, sprinkle it on. Now, get some trees. I have a lot of these trees, so I like to use these. These are, of course, Woodland Scenic. And I'll pick out some trees that I think look pretty good. Get my poker. Let's see, it looks good right about there. I've got some little ones over here. Another little one over here. There. Now we have a pretty good looking blocking terrain. Looks like a little forest. I'm going to put another one. be over here. Beautiful. There, we have a pretty good looking little forest terrain. Now we'll let this dry and see how it looks when it's dry. So, there you have it. Really, really good looking blocking forest terrain. See you next time on the next episode of Crafts from the Round Table.